What exactly is a GCSE English Literature examiner looking for when marking essays on Great Expectations? And what exactly does a grade 9 responder look like? I'm going to show you. Let's watch Schofield on Shakespeare. Both AQA and OCR are looking for the same thing. For AO1, show a great understanding of the text and the task using embedded quotations to back up your points. For AO2, explore the meaning and effect of the quotations in some detail, making sure that you use subject terminology such as verb, simile, metaphor, etc. accurately. And for AO3, ensure that you explore the text within the context in which it is written, in this case Victorian Britain, and have some understanding of how this affects the way we respond. Now for an exam-style extract question, explore how Dickens presents the relationship between Magwitch and Pip in this extract and elsewhere in the novel. In this extract, Magwitch reveals to Pip that he is his benefactor. "May I make so bold," he said then, with a smile that was like a frown, and with a frown that was like a smile, "as ask you how you have done well, since you and me was out on them lone shivering marshes?" "How?" "Ah." He emptied his glass, got up and stood at the side of the fire, with his heavy brown hand on the mantelshelf. He put a foot up to the bars to dry and warm it, and the wet boot began to steam. But he neither looked at it nor at the fire, but steadily looked at me. It was only now that I began to tremble. When my lips had parted and had shaped some words that were without sound, I forced myself to tell him, although I could not do it distinctly, that I had been chosen to succeed to some property. "Might a mere warmit ask what property?" said he. I faltered. "I don't know." "Might a mere warmit ask whose property?" said he. I faltered again. "I don't know." "Could I make a guess, I wonder?" said the convict. "At your income since you come of age? As to the first figure now. 5? With my heart beating like a heavy hammer of disordered action, I rose out of my chair and stood with my hand upon the back of it, looking wildly at him. "Concerning a guardian," he went on. "There ought to have been some guardian or such like whilst you was a minor. Some lawyer, maybe. As for the first letter of that lawyer's name now, would it be J?" All the truth of my position came flashing on me, and its disappointments, dangers, disgraces, consequences of all kinds rushed in such a multitude that I was borne down by them and had to struggle for every breath I drew. My suggestion is that you have a go at writing your own response to this question. However, before doing so, you may like to consider the structure on screen now. Press pause if you would like to read this through in more detail. The video will resume in 5 seconds' time. So here's the question and the first part of the extract. The second part will appear 5 seconds later so that you can toggle between the slides. Press pause to get writing. Here's my response. The relationship between Magwitch and Pip evolves throughout the novel. At the beginning, there is an unequal encounter in which the older man terrorizes the younger. When Pip finds out that Magwitch is his benefactor, he clearly feels repulsed at being dependent on a convict. However, at the end of the novel, the pair have grown to love each other in spite of their differences. In this extract, Pip feels extremely uncomfortable and ill at ease with Magwitch, as the truth slowly dawns on him that the convict must be his benefactor. He began to tremble when the convict pointedly stares at him and faltered when asked direct questions about the source of his recent prosperity. These verbs show that Pip is so nervous that he is physically shaking and unable to speak with his characteristic gentleman-generated confidence and eloquence. When Magwitch gives the first specific detail about Pip's income, His heart beats like a heavy hammer of disordered action, and he looks wildly. The simile suggests that his heartbeat feels uncomfortably loud, and that it is beating dangerously haphazardly, whilst further loss of control and composure is seen in the adverb wildly, thus illustrating his extreme distress at having to hear the truth about his benefactor. At this point in the novel, it is implicitly clear that snobbish Pip feels as though he can have nothing to do with or have nothing in common with a convict, hence his aversion to him in this extract. Magwitch's attitude towards Pip needs to be gleaned largely from his speech in this extract, as Pip the narrator is focusing almost exclusively on his younger self's reactions and feelings. He asks a series of questions which slowly reveal the fact that he is Pip's benefactor, including, might a mere warmint ask what property? The phrase mere warmint, with warmint being dialect for varmint or vermin, shows implicitly that Magwitch can tell that Pip is disgusted by him. Vermin refers to small creatures which are considered obnoxious, and Magwitch's repeated use of this phrase shows that he is conscious of being perceived as socially abhorrent, something far more significant in Victorian Britain than today's society. Nonetheless, the fact that Magwitch takes his time before revealing his ongoing munificence shows a degree of confidence, in spite of the fact that he can tell he is disgusting Pip. He asks exactly the same question quoted above again, but substitutes whose for what. At this point of the novel, he is toying with Pip, safe in the knowledge that he has been the sole reason for Pip's ascension to the status of gentleman, and thus that he will be entitled to recognition and a degree of gratitude. The pair first met in the first chapters of the novel, when Pip was an innocent child and the convict had just escaped. As with this extract, Pip feels deeply uneasy at having to be with and listen to the convict, albeit for very different reasons. He is terrified by both the convict's appearance and his grisly threats, including, your heart and your liver shall be tore out, roasted and ate. The verbs used are vividly violent, with a suggestion that Pip's inner body parts will be ripped out of him before being applied to fire and consumed. Here the relationship is clearly an unequal one, with desperate Magwitch keen to intimidate and terrify as much as possible in order to increase the chances of Pip following his instructions. With the extract shown, in contrast, in which Pip is a superficially self-assured adult and gentleman, Magwitch needs greater subtlety in order to break down the barrier between them. The older Pip is likely to be far more affected by a revelation of the truth about his income than cannibalistic threats. But far more importantly, Magwitch wants to have a genuine relationship with Pip at this point, whereas previously he just wanted a chance of survival. It is in the closing stages of the novel that the pair finally share a loving relationship. Pip has recognised that Magwitch has dedicated a huge part of his life to helping him, albeit arguably misguidedly. Pip himself acknowledges that he would probably have been happier staying in the forge with Joe. It is important to remember the context. The death penalty was only abolished in 1965, over 100 years after the publication of this novel. Thus, Magwitch's actions emphasise just how desperate he is to have a fulfilling father-son-esque relationship. He is literally risking his life by returning to London to meet him, which he indeed subsequently loses. Fortunately, over time, Pip's gratitude has developed into love, as the narrator confirms in chapter 54. My repugnance to him had all melted away. He was a mere hunted, wounded, shackled creature. To Pip, Magwitch is no longer warmint, but someone who has suffered both physically and emotionally, and someone who deserves sympathy and love. He is able to recognise that Magwitch has felt affectionately, gratefully and generously towards him, and can finally reciprocate. The three adverbs would perhaps be typically used to describe the actions of a gentleman rather than a convict. However, this is fitting. Dickens shows us through the development of Pip and Magwitch's relationship that what matters in life is how we feel and behave towards each other rather than our social backgrounds. Why does this get full marks for both AQA and OCR? Let's go through the assessment objectives in turn. Well, for AO1, note the sharp focus on the question within the brief introductory paragraph. No waffle. Notice the use of short, embedded quotations at regular intervals. And note that I'm showing a critical perceptive understanding of the pair's relationship, as seen in my point linking the evolution of their relationship with a broader point which Dickens is making about class. Now on to AO2. Note how specific and detailed I am when analysing the simile about the hammer and the adverb wildly, whilst I also employ subject terminology accurately as shown in the use of the terms simile and adverb. And finally, AO3, I explicitly reference the context and the effect of this context. It is even more significant that Magwitch returns to London compared to a modern equivalent. The fact he does this shows just how much he longs for that communion, that connection with the boy he has mysteriously influenced from afar for so long.
That's it. If it's been useful, do add some comments within the space below. But remember, the best candidates aren't just going to be watching YouTube videos. They're also going to be reading and rereading the text and making their own annotations, as I do here. Good luck, by God, and many thanks for watching Schofield on Shakespeare.